Welcome back in. We're going to kick off the Ohio State Subregional with the first match of that first round sub, and that's going to be a nooner with Missouri up against South Dakota. And we welcome in the sports director at KOMU News in Columbia. He was on the call for a couple Missouri matches this season through ESPN and SEC Network. Plus, he's Ben Arnet. Ben, thanks so much for joining me today.
Good to be here talking a little volleyball as we finally get to this tournament. It's been a long time coming.
I'm telling you what, this may be the most highly anticipated college volleyball tournament. And on top of that, I have a feeling it's going to live up to the hype. This is a fantastic first round game. I am more than excited to check out Missouri, a team that has been dominant, especially in the tournament 6 years in a row. This will be the 6th year in a row that Missouri has made the tournament. They've won their first round match in 6 straight tournaments and 2 Sweet 16s. Back hosting in 2016. So we know that Coach Josh Taylor and his crew, they've got the chops. Now the question is, will they be able to stave off a feisty team in South Dakota to move on and face Ohio State in the second round? Let me ask you, you've seen them on the court this season. I was able to watch a few matches. I saw that phenomenal 5-setter against the Gators. DeBerg is such a stud, but what makes her so special on the outside?
Well, it really starts with her serve. That really strikes fear into a lot of teams. You don't find a lot of players who hit that 1-to-1, ace to error ratio that she does. But she's right on that number, and so it starts there. When they're in system, it's just so repetitive and almost easy for them at times, especially with the chemistry that she and Andrea Fuentes, the setter, have developed over the years. She's got a really great swing. She has a lot of power, but I think one of the things that we've seen, especially the last couple of years, is she's really playing the game mentally more now. And it is not always, let me get the hardest swing on this that I can. She will go off speed. She will go roll shot. She will do whatever it takes to get that ball down on the other side. She really keeps the other side thinking. She keeps them on their toes. It is not strictly a leaping and power game with her. And that's probably where you've seen the most amount of development with her over her 3 years at Missouri since she transferred from Illinois.
They were one of the last 4 teams in, and that's always something that, kind of piques my interest, whether when they get that released and you find out you're a last 4 team in. Was the feeling around the club that they were expecting to make the tournament, or were they feeling like they were right on that bubble?
They knew it. I did their last home series against Texas A&M, which at this point was about 3 weeks ago. And when I talked to Josh Taylor, they knew it. They knew they were squarely on the bubble. They've had a really up and down season, even going back to the fall. And they knew they were squarely on the bubble going into their last 4 matches. They took care of business. They swept all 4 of those. It was 2 at home against Texas A&M and then 2 on the road against Mississippi State and Starkville. They knew even then they were still right on the borderline. And even yesterday, when I got a chance to talk to Josh and a couple of the players, that was still in their mind. They knew they were one of the last 4 in. I think they feel really grateful to be in this spot. Not only the 9-month season and the up and down nature of it, but this is a team that has lost 2 of its best players from a year ago. Lecator member Monet decided to opt out, and that goes back to the middle of the fall season. And then Tiana Omazich, who is a fantastic all-conference middle, suffered a terrible knee injury towards the end of the fall season. She's out and won't be back until next year. So when you combine those things with the longest season of any college sport, and I know soccer has been playing a month longer, but they haven't been playing twice a week like volleyball has. They've been playing once a week. And in the SEC, they've been playing these 2-game series where you get the same team back to back. And I think the coaches like that, but it can also be draining when Missouri's they had a tough draw. They had Kentucky for 2 in a row. They had Florida for 2 in a row. They had Tennessee for 2 in a row when Tennessee was getting really red hot. So they feel fortunate to be in the tournament. They know that this is a real blessing for them, considering the type of season that they had. And the real rallying cry for them right now is, let's reset this thing. They've had a couple of weeks off. They're going to have 10 days to go until they play South Dakota, depending on when people listen to this. So they're really looking at this as a chance to hit the reset button, get some rest in, refocus, and really be able to bring a lot of energy and enthusiasm to the tournament.
Yeah, you talk about rebounding beautifully. I mean, you talk the Florida losses, the South Carolina loss. that Tennessee loss all coming in February and mid-March, and then bouncing back with the sweep over A&M, 5-set win over the Aggies, and then 6 sets, all pretty perfect against Mississippi State on the road when they needed it. I'll tell you what, I'm sure Missouri fans are happy to not see Nebraska on the other side of that bracket. One thing that is continually coming up in these conversations is relief that the regions are not geographically challenged like usually, where the Texas teams are playing Texas teams in Florida and Florida. So Missouri fans, I'm sure you remember the phenomenal second round match between Nebraska and Missouri last year, 32-30 in a deciding, not totally deciding, but in a pivotal third set that saw Nebraska take it in 4. What needs to happen this season in order for Missouri to possibly get through that Sweet 16, ceiling and possibly, make some noise and maybe get by Ohio State and Florida and move on to the 4th round?
Well, they like their draw. I mean, kind of getting to what you alluded to. They do like that. And that's not taking anything away from Ohio State. Missouri certainly knows, and that's been one of their biggest problems and one of their biggest barriers to getting to the Sweet 16 when they've been able to win in the second round and not get through. They haven't been to a Sweet 16 since 2017 when they had an SEC championship team that made it through, and that was Kansas they had to beat. So they didn't have to go through the Big Ten the last time they went to the Sweet 16. But they like their draw. I think more than who the opponent might be, they just like the way they're playing right now, and they like the way that they've been able to get some rest in. They're looking at this as rest, not rust. When you look at the 3 weeks that it's going to be a day short of 3 weeks between matches when they play South Dakota. That's a good thing for this team because, I'll be honest with you, when they were coming out of that Florida series and they were getting ready to hit the final 4 matches, knowing they needed to win, it was a worn down club. I mean, they were really tired, which you can't blame them for. That Texas A&M couple of games was huge for them because Texas A&M is an up and coming program under Bird Coon. They've been to the tournament, I think at least once, maybe twice with her as the head coach. She brings a lot of energy to that group. She had that group really focused on, we need to win here. We're going to come out of this weekend as the ones that kind of view it as an elimination weekend. Missouri was really able to play well and controlled that weekend. And I think that proved to them they've got their legs back. They can win even when their backs are against the wall. And Josh Taylor had a really interesting quote yesterday in his media session when I asked him about, how do you approach this? Can you roll momentum over the course of 3 weeks from a 4-match winning streak to close the regular season into the NCAA tournament? And he said he's a firm believer that when your back is against the wall, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your preparation. That's what he said. And he's planning on putting them through a pretty rigorous practice schedule over the next week and a half, because he feels like as they get into the postseason, they're going to face those moments, and he wants their baseline at a certain level to be able to succeed. And for folks who don't know, Josh is a former U.S. national team member. He was an All-American at Pepperdine in his playing days, and his top assistant coach is his wife, Molly Taylor, who was an All-American at Missouri and the SEC Player of the Year when Missouri won their first conference title back in 2013 in the Southeastern Conference, and also as a national team member. That's actually where they met, both training in Colorado Springs. So they have that's really their vision. They push. They really know how to, both physically and mentally push their players without being abusive and without pushing them over the edge. And they really feel like that's going to be the key to succeeding in the postseason, regardless of who they face.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one between Missouri and South Dakota. And then if they were to move on, they'll face a talented, young, but inexperienced Ohio State team that'll all be there for the first time. Excited to see if Florida and Missouri can get that rematch that the SEC surely wants. Ben, thanks so much for joining me today.
No problem. Anytime.
He's Ben Arnet, the sports director at KOMU News in Columbia. And we're going to move on down to South Dakota next. And so we heard Missouri's side. Now let's tackle the South Dakota side. I am joined by Brian Haenchen from the Argus Leader in Sioux Falls. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm good, dude. I'm doing good. How are you?
Cannot complain. I get to talk volleyball right in the morning, bright and early, and we should have one of the better first round matches here. One of the last couple teams in Missouri. They're probably just happy to be making the tournament and will definitely bring size and a lot of power from the left side. But South Dakota is definitely not your average, well, they got an automatic bid, they're in the tournament. This is a team that has a little chip on their shoulder, right? 31-3 last year, but upset in the conference championship. Didn't make the NCAA tournament, but went deep in the NIVC, eventually falling to Georgia Tech. This is a new team. This is a new system. And, head coach Leanne Williamson seems like she's got some fight on their hands with the come from behind wins we've seen late in the season.
Absolutely. And at the beginning of the year, too, before COVID canceled everything, South Dakota was building a schedule that would have set them up for an at-large bid if it came to it. Obviously, that got wiped out. Their match, I think they had Louisville on there and MIZZOU, actually. But that got wiped out. So instead, they added 2 matches against Creighton in non-conference play. And I think that did a lot for them just in terms of their development and in building the resiliency that we saw on Sunday against Denver, where they came back from an 0-2 deficit. They came back from match point in the third. They came back from 3 match points in the 5th set after having the winning point overturned by video review. It's just remarkable. And even dating back to the game against Kansas City the night before in the semifinals, where, again, they had to battle through some adversity against a really good defensive team where nothing they were hitting really seemed to fall consistently. They found a way to grind it out. And it's just one of those teams that it seems like things are starting to peak at sort of the right time for them, and they're hitting their stride. So it'll be really interesting to see how they do there against Missouri and how they handle some of the things that Missouri brought, especially the size, like you mentioned, and they were a big attacker as well.
Yeah, one of the few teams that did get some decent, pre-conference play, and they opened the season with a loss against Wichita State, who is not your terrible loss. And then you've got at Missouri State, another solid loss, right? A 5-setter, but something that probably was a wake-up call to the team after a 31-win season in 2019. Then you get that incredible 5-set win at Creighton, a team that is in the NCAA tournament. You lose in 5 sets against Creighton, and then Summit play starts, and pretty dominant throughout Summit play, finishing with a 12-3 record. But tell me about some of these standouts, right? Who can the college volleyball fan take a look at and say, okay, if I'm going to pick South Dakota for this upset, and Elizabeth Junkie seems to be the standout on this team, who can help her and provide a good role around their MVP?
Junkie's definitely the centerpiece on the offense. She's so good. Her attack, she's so good up there at the net. She can play all around on the floor. She's joined by Sammy Slaughter, a Nebraska transfer who's actually a South Dakota kid. She's been dealing with a little bit of a shoulder issue this season, but she hasn't allowed it to affect her play. I think she's just battling through some pain, but she's another one up at the net that's really good. Madison Harms, their right blocker, I think it is. She's been phenomenal this year after kind of she was good last year, but this year she's really come on, especially defensively with the blocks and some of the stuff that she brings at the net. She changes a match with her length and size and the way that she's able to use that during a match. And then in the back row, Lola Weideman came on really strong over the weekend against Denver and Kansas City. So it'll be interesting to see if she's able to parlay that and continue that momentum here into the NCAA tournament as well. And then at center, Madison Jurgens has been consistently among the best in the Summit League. She didn't get an all-conference nod this year, but she has been the last couple of years. She's another one that's really good and really makes things run for this offense. And there's so many girls who are just so good within their roles, and all the pieces that really come together and gelled and meshed to elevate this team. And I think that part of that is because they returned, a lot of pieces from their 2019 campaign, which has helped out a lot.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple people returning from last year. They made the NCAA tournament back in 2018, lost in 3 sets to Creighton in the first round, but there are a couple of those upperclassmen that have experienced this before. You mentioned Sammy Slaughter. I saw her on the NCAA volleyball account. She made a top 5 play in the last couple weeks. So that she's got that athleticism when she's playing all around. But last question here, and something that I think I'm going to keep extra attention to this season. It's a noon Eastern time start, right? So South Dakota, I am confident, did not play any 9 a.m., 10 a.m. starts this season local time. So tell me about what you think the adjustment might be for a team that, like you, you're waking up early. We're 10 a.m., Eastern time right now for this interview. Maybe, it could be an advantage. They don't have to wait around all day, but they'll have to wake up those limbs a little early.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much of a sort of feeling out process there is between both sides, honestly. Because, South Dakota's earliest match this year, I think, was 1 p.m. So it'll be interesting. You figure that the week of practice, maybe they adjust things a little bit, start things a little bit earlier just to make sure that everybody's bodies are ready to go and are used to playing at such an early hour. But no, that'll be an interesting component to this whole thing, is just the time and how that affects which team is able to find their stride earliest. I don't expect this match to be over in 3 either way. I think this one, it feels like, just the way that things have been trending, that it could go a full 4 or 5, but we'll see. If a team's able to get going quickly enough, maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Yeah, my gut is saying that both of these first round matches in the Ohio State and Florida Subregional are going to be dandies. And I'm sure that the Buckeyes and the Gators are ready for those teams to go 5 and extra points and wear themselves out. Brian, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
No doubt about it. From the Argus leader in Sioux Falls, he's Brian Haenchen. And now we can break down Morehead State and Creighton. Heading down to the other side of this sub-regional, it's Morehead State against Creighton, and I'm joined by the Morehead State Volleyball SID, Ryan Frye. Ryan, should be a fantastic match here, a 3:30 Eastern time first serve in this first round match. Walk me through what the Ohio Valley tournament was like. It seems like Morehead State had some easy work.
Well, Daniel, first off, thanks for having me on with you. But really, that tournament, it was the 2 heavyweights. It dropped down to a 4-team tournament, and the 3 teams picked at the top were the 3 teams that were left. Unfortunately, kind of a COVID situation caught the 4th team and allowed for a bye. But all in all, it was the 2 best teams playing for a championship. For the 3rd time that week, they matched up against each other. Morehead State able to get the sweep for the 2nd time in as many matches and claim that championship.
And you know what? That can sometimes be tougher when you don't have a little bit of that, opportunity to play in the semifinals, just jump right to the championship. And Morehead State did not miss a beat. 3 players in double-digit kills. Walk me through some of the names that fans might want to keep an eye on here in this first round.
I'd say it all would start with Olivia Lohmeyer, who is the Ohio Valley Conference Player of the Year. She ranks 17th and 20th in the NCAA in points per set and kills per set. And the offense kind of goes as she goes. And you alluded to those 2 in double figures. Lauren Roque, who's the other outside hitter, her and Lohmeyer, both seniors. And then sophomore Abby Holzman, who's really developed on the right side, an outside hitter that's adjusted to hitting on that right side. And then, the team goes as setter Bridget Bessler goes. I'd say she's one of the top setters in the country. As a sophomore, she ranks 5th in the NCAA with 11.72 assists per set. And then to not be lost is an exceptional back row, especially in serve receive, to get that first great pass.
Yeah, you can, talk about all of the statistics and all of that, but Jamie Gordon has just initiated a winning organization, right? 5 Ohio Valley Conference championships in the last 10 years. This is the first trip, though, since 2013, and Morehead State looking for their first set in the NCAA tournament. I'm asking you now, Ryan, there's a lot of these teams that are looking for that first set, and I feel like the 48-team format might take a little bit of an advantage towards that because Morehead State won't have to play a national seed. But taking a look at a team like Creighton, they're pretty close to a blue blood in the Big East. What needs to happen, in your opinion? What kind of game flow might we need to see in order for the upset to take place?
I wouldn't necessarily say an upset. It's a very good matchup for Morehead State, against Creighton, a team that kind of blocks well, and a team kind of the caliber that Morehead State had been playing really in its last 3 matches in Jacksonville State. For Morehead State, you just got to play your game, get those 3 hitters involved. Your primary hitters, obviously Lohmeyer. You get your secondary and tertiary options, and then get the middles involved. Didn't mention it earlier, but 2 very standout middles, and Mia Swearingen and Mackenzie Wagner, with Wagner standing 6'5". If they can add a couple points there with the block against a Creighton team that runs a 6'2", and then add a couple kills here and there to kind of complement those outsides, and then pick up a point or 2 in the service game. Also, Morehead State top 30 in the country in service aces per set. Need to probably get 1 or 2 in the match to stay competitive.
You know what? Good point there, right? The size may make this not as lopsided as some fans may think. Creighton is not as dominant as we've seen in the last few years. Now, Florida, they've got some size, and 6'5" could match up very nicely with 6'5" in the second round. 3:30 Eastern time on that first round match. And I'll tell you what, I'm sure Morehead State fans are just happy to avoid the Big Ten. It was Illinois in 2013 and Purdue back in 2011. We'll see if 2021 is the magic number for Morehead State. Thank you so much for joining me, Ryan.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
He's the SID for Morehead State Volleyball, Ryan Frye. We're going to head out to Omaha. They're the host of the tournament, and we'll talk Creighton next. Well, it's time to wrap up the second sub-regional with Creighton, a team that is taking on Morehead State. We just talked to Morehead State a minute ago. Creighton 12-3 up against the 16-1 team. A 3:30 start to see who could take on Florida, and I'm joined by Jon Schriner. He's a broadcaster for the Big East Digital Network covering Creighton over the past few years. Jon, what's going on?
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Omaha, and excited to talk to you about a little volleyball, Daniel.
We are all excited for Omaha to be the home, right? College baseball fans know Omaha as a mecca. Volleyball fans, I'm sure, are used to hearing Nebraska brag about how you guys are the home for all of the best college volleyball fans. So now it's time to put it to the test the same way that Indianapolis did for college basketball. Tell me, when it comes down to it, how would you rank Lincoln versus Omaha as volleyball cities?
Well, I mean, there's no place like Lincoln, in the Devaney Center when that place is rocking and the Huskers are on top of the world. It's hard to beat that environment. But, with Creighton's small arena, it can get pretty rowdy in there too. And then when the big events are held at CHI, I mean, the fans just come from all over the state and all over the region, really. So I think for the fans that do get to attend, it'll be a lot of fun.
So Creighton gets the automatic bid, their sixth title in the last 7 years. Last year, it was Marquette that got that win in the championship game. This year, a 4-set come from behind win for Creighton, for Coach Booth, avenging their only conference loss of the regular season. And did it feel like a different team in the postseason this year in that conference tournament with that little chip on their shoulder, losing the title last year?
Well, to be honest with you, Dan, it's felt like a different team all year. I mean, this team didn't have the dominant single setter that we're used to seeing Coach Booth run. So they've had to switch to a two-setter system this year. And, they've had to be much more versatile. They've had to spread the ball around as they haven't had that, big time go-to attacker either. It's been very much a spread the ball around team. And so, from the jump, from the outset of the season, this has felt like a different team than we've seen in the past few for Creighton. But, Kirsten Bernthal-Booth is just a tremendous coach. She's going to find a way to get it done. And look, they still have a lot of talent. They're still a very talented team. So as far as having a chip on their shoulder, I mean, that conference loss, I think they're 54-1 in their last 55 conference matches at home. And that loss came to Marquette in the regular season. This year wasn't supposed to be a conference match. They were just playing a match to try and boost each other's RPI
right
ahead of the next weekend when they were going to open conference play with each other. Weren't able to play it. The conference retroactively went back and said, nope, that one counts. So that actually was Creighton's regular season loss in conference play. That wasn't supposed to be a conference match. So yeah, I would say overall, it's just felt like a bit of a different season for Creighton, as I'm sure it has for everyone.
So fill us in, the casual volleyball fans that may not have watched a ton of Big East volleyball, taking a look at the stats. It's Jayla Zimmerman, it's Keely Davis. It seems like there's a little bit of that two-headed monster. Is Welty coming off the bench? Is she more of that role player as that third attacker?
Yeah, Welty will usually come in and she'll play on the right side. And the other one to watch out for really is, either of the two middles. Naomi Hickman is tremendous on the block. And that's, to be honest, that's really what's been leading Creighton this year. The attack has been kind of hot and cold, hit or miss at times, but defensively they've just been so good. And, they have two middles who are averaging over a block a set. And Naomi Hickman has really been good on the offense as well. Kiara Reinhardt would be the other middle. But Naomi Hickman, she just comes up with big points when they need it. And she has this tremendous ability to slide in late and still get a block touch. So, the two big hitters in Zimmerman and Davis, yeah, they're going to be there match in and match out. But kind of the X factor is one of those middles in Reinhardt or Hickman.
And so that size will surely be an advantage up against a team that hasn't been there before, right? Morehead State filled with players that have never been to the tournament. It's their first trip in 8 years. You take a look and it's hard not to peek ahead. Florida waiting for them. That could be a matchup of fantastic middles. What do you think is separating Creighton from getting back to that 2016 run that they went on that saw them beat Kansas, beat Michigan, and finally, fall to Texas, but getting to that fourth round of the tournament? They haven't gotten out of the first round since gotten out of the second round since 2016.
Yeah, I think it's this year, if there's anything that's going to hold them back, it's just going to be that offensive consistency. They don't necessarily have a player who's going to get you, 13, 14, 15 kills every night. There's nobody on this team that's going to get 6, 7 kills per set. So they do have to really spread the ball around, which makes, that makes the serve and pass game really important for this team. If they're serving the ball well and the block is working, that's where this team becomes really formidable. With serving aces and denying points from the other team's attack, if they can do that, they have a chance to make a run. Florida is such a big team. They have so much size. I mean, when you have a 6'7" right side hitter, that's a huge task to try and overcome something like that. And Creighton's not a small team by any means, but, if it comes down to Creighton and Florida, if they are able to get past Morehead State and into that second round, the defense for Creighton is going to be the biggest key for me.
Defense and maybe even a little bit of home support if the crowd can get into Creighton there at home. Jon,
Right
thank you so much. Thanks for joining me.
I appreciate the opportunity. Have a great time, Daniel.
Thank you so much. That'll wrap up this episode of the Ohio State and Florida sub-region. Next, we'll do Kentucky, so stay tuned for that coming up tomorrow.